lindo.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Books and Authors Show. Today, we're very excited to welcome multi-award-winning Brazilian author Author-Heloisa-Prieto, and she's joining us to talk about her new novel. It's called The Musician. Now, whenever I hear the word musician, I'm already intrigued. I encourage you to go to her website, themusician.info. It came out December 13th. And so you can go get it now. It's going to make a wonderful holiday gift. And this is really exciting. Heloisa has, multi-award winning, like I was saying, multi-award winning author, but all done in Brazil. So this is her first English book, I believe. And her other books, over 2 million books have been sold in Brazil. And I think she's written like something like 60 books. Like she knows how to write, trust me. So welcome to the show, Heloisa. How are you?
Hi, how are you? So nice to be here with you.
Oh, it's just wonderful. I have to tell you, I started reading The Musician. I've got the ebook, right? And immediately my first thing was, this is a beautiful piece of art. It slows you down. It has got magic on every single page. It makes you think and feel. And it was just this instant connection with this book. There is magic. And then I started, and normally I just go, oh, this sounds like a good book to check out. And then you start reading, and I don't read all the press releases or anything. I just start reading. And then later I'm reading, oh, it's done this for magical, this and that. And I'm like, no, but it is magical. It's my magic now. So tell us a little bit about that magic, because it's very poetic. And is that kind of how you've always written your books, with that bit of magic?
Not always. I have a series that became a movie called The
Mm.
Best Things in the World, and it got the prize of the best movie for young people in Mexico, 2000, I mean in Spain,
Oh.
2010. And this is The Best Things in the World is very realistic, a bit like The Catcher in the Rye,
Mm.
with internal monologues with young people. There is a little hint of magic due to Afro-Brazilian characters, but very little. But now with The Musician, I wanted to focus on Guarani way of capturing life, because I've been very close to not only Guarani, but originary people in Brazil for a long time. My father was very keen on their culture. I was brought up learning that they knew their way much better than us,
Mm.
So
I
when,
just want to back up real quick. So those of us who aren't familiar, so it's let me see if I said it right. I'm going to say it right. The Guarani people? No.
yeah, yeah,
Did I
Guarani,
say it?
Guarani,
Guarani?
yes,
So
Guarani, yes,
these are shamanic people, or the indigenous people of the rainforest?
both,
Okay, good.
Uh, there are several nations in Brazil, Munduruku Nation, Guarani Nation, I'm closer to, and also, anyway, there are several different nations. But
Okay.
Guarani Nation is close to São Paulo, where I live. It's just like 2 hours drive. And then
Oh.
when you leave São Paulo is the largest city in South America, very much like New York, with buildings and things. But then when you go through the road and you get into the reservation, it's an entirely different world. And they keep a magical way of seeing life, not in the sense of naive child, but in the sense of reading signs
Mm.
and also being close contact with nature. And
Mm.
so, and with you as well,
Mm.
if you become friends, they
Mm.
revere very much. For you to have an idea, I went to the first indigenous book fair once, and I met an incredible shaman called Mora Tucano. He was up north. And we were all the time, walking around, and I saw him things like it was a regular book fair, and then somebody came, look at him, an old lady, and started telling him all her life. And then he gave 3 pieces of advice. The woman started crying, and was moved and left. And I couldn't follow. It was so fast, the connection.
Mm.
Anyway, when I came back from the book fair, my father, whom I was very close to, was diagnosed with cancer. And I was
Mm.
feeling very sad, he
Yeah.
didn't, he had only 3 months ahead of him.
Oh,
All of a sudden, my cell phone rings. Who is it? Mora Tucano. And I say, Mora, are you in Sao Paulo? Why are you calling me? And he says, no, no, I'm here in the Amazon. My soul, your soul was calling my soul. I felt I had to talk to you.
oh, wow.
Yeah, so
Wow.
he was
So, and
very
does
nice.
that part of your other book series that you've also written?
No,
That,
the previous series were more focused on regular themes, for the youth, such
mm,
as bullying, drug addiction, depression, but they were taboos in Brazil.
oh,
So they became very, very successful because they were, the first time somebody was
mm,
also dictatorship years, and the scars, dictatorship, those years left
oh,
in young kids in Brazil. And so they became very popular. And finally, Warner Brothers bought the rights and they became, they were adapted into a very beautiful movie called The Best Things in the World. What I
okay.
keep always is the basic values of life, no matter what approach, if it's magical or if it's realistic or magical realism. I'm always interested in seeing beyond, the
Hmm.
invisible world, but invisible not only in terms of supernatural, but in terms of the feelings, because you cannot see love, you cannot touch uh, happiness, These
Hmm.
are invisible values, So I'm always trying to focus on that, how we should be concerned with friendship, solidarity, resilience, everything that's inside, not only consumed.
Yeah, because the musician, there's some real things going on. Thomas, I would say Tomas now.
Yeah,
Thomas, your main character,
it's
the
up to
musician.
you. Yeah,
I know I want to say Tomas, but there it is. But he, he's a musician, a young musician, has some weight on his shoulders, but you do show the good and the bad in life, right? And how it's easy to take to where your decisions can go. And then you show the good people in life too. And talking about the Guarani, am I saying it?
yeah, it's perfect.
Guarani,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Um, that that magical part is it. I think it's very much intuition, like you were saying when he called you and he's like, "I'm in your soul called my soul, called my soul." That we are connected that way. That
yeah,
is
yeah,
not something, and it's we lose it, and it's I think maybe even being in cities can be very difficult because we lose those natural abilities. And my life living in different, in the bush in Africa and stuff like that, being close to those people, you become very aware. Not even it you're more connected with nature, so your intuition is very sharp,
yeah,
in comparison. So there's special people that remind us that, I mean, there's a whole universe out there. So that's, I think you've got that universal magic in this book that makes you realize there's always something beyond, you know?
yeah,
And
yeah.
music is like the medicine of the world, right? And the language of
Yes,
the world.
yes. And also, it's your connecting with your inner nature, right?
Hmm.
And then your nature connects with outside nature. So, and then everybody has this forest side in a way.
Mm.
So it was also, I had a friend who helped me, Esther Stone. He's a guitar player and a very nice person and very intuitive as well. And he has traveled all over the world, and he's very mystical. So he's always looking for the healing aspects of his own music.
Mm.
And we became close friends. He came to São Paulo. So we went to the healing song guitar player called Aparicio in the reservation. It was wonderful. So there was a chapter called Five Strings in which the dialogues were real
Mm.
because just a little spoiler, in the real life, Estes is very famous, people are always asking him to play. But when he got into the praying house, the shaman wouldn't let him play,
Mm.
which was such a surprise for us. And he said, no, you must listen. You haven't listened. You have to listen. You
Ooh.
forgot how to listen. And so it was wonderful. He was there for 3 days and he was taken care of. And then he played later on, and that was very inspiring for him as well.
See, that's where that coexistence of nature is. You don't know where you are without listening to what's happening in nature. And music, what we do as humans, it's mimicking nature, and we are nature. So it's, to me, that's what's so interesting about this story. And it's just, it's got the good and the bad too. We always have to, that light. How are you feeling now in regards to, especially with these magical people, indigenous people, looking at what is happening at the Amazon? Do you feel an urgency in your country right now for
Yeah,
protecting? And it sounds like positive things are happening with your president, and hopefully, I don't know.
yeah.
I don't live there. I don't want to get political, but in regards to caring for the Amazon and your natural world where you are, do you feel like people are coming together to do that?
Yeah, it's improving, thanks God, you know. But anyway, there was a day here in São Paulo and the skies were black. I was giving a lecture to young readers when I came out from the school. It was like night and the smell was horrible. And it was the burning of Amazon the first day. You know, it
No.
was a shock for me because I grew up in the rainforest. My family had always this connection. We were always coming back and forth and truck driving around, you know. And I was so shocked. For me, that was my father's universe as well, because he's the one who got me into that path, you know.
Oh,
And so this is when also I felt an urge to write the story. But of course, it was not easy to write it. I was depressed in some periods, you know, because I was afraid they would be killed. There was an actual genocide going on in the Amazon. And but that's my contribution,
mm,
because I thought instead of raising my finger and say, don't do that, how about if I try and show the beauty and depth
mhm,
and seduce readers to that atmosphere?
yes.
Because everybody knows it's wrong, you know, but
Mhm,
how can that atmosphere compete with consumerism,
mm,
for a young person, you know, with everything that contemporary life can offer? And so I realized there were no young adult characters, indigenous characters, except for the Twilight Zone. I mean, the Twilight series, you know, when there was,
okay, yeah, yeah.
which they love, by the way, you know. My indigenous friends, they love that because they say it's the first hero, the indigenous hero they ever saw, you know. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, because they said, my friend Daniel Munduruku, he said, when I was a child, people were watching Apaches being killed.
Mm,
Now,
mhm.
this is the first story where you show somebody who's very attractive, so attractive. His arrival to an European character. This is
That's,
new, and they loved it. And I
oh,
thought, how about the girls? You know, the girls,
mm,
amazing. Guarani girls, you know, indigenous or people. And I thought Marie then would be a very impressive female character with her intuition and the way she could change the narrative, you know,
mm,
by inserting herself into his life, Thomas' life, before he's deceased, you know. And so that's what I thought, and made me feel
mm,
a little better. You know? Also, I went back and forth, talking to them and making movies, and I don't know, being healed as well, you know, and getting some advice to write. And so Thomas, he doesn't know anything about culture. So the reader who doesn't know can focus on Thomas and learn with him. You know, it's a coming of age story. It's
mm,
initiation narrative in the sense that as a reader, you can learn about their culture just like Thomas is learning because he
mm.
knows nothing about them. And I don't know when the book will be released in Brazil.
Oh, wow.
It's
I'm
really
excited. I want to
better.
see it as a movie too, because, the thought of Thomas, what I loved is that, there's that whole thing where you hear in color, where you can,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? And so music can have different colors. And there's a whole science behind that. But with Thomas having characters be part of the music, where he's actually connecting with these entities, these beings with his music, that to me is really, really special. That's like, having friends around you the whole time in your
Yeah,
music.
yeah.
So he's not alone, but it's still, it's something different, right? It's like having different muses in a way, right? So where did that part come up for you? Like going, hey, he's going to have a bunch of friends that other people can't see.
You see, I watch lots of series in Netflix and streaming, and I hardly ever see a story in which the supernatural is good.
Mm,
It's always frightening, and the ghosts are always bad and haunted souls, trying to destroy houses and kids everywhere, not only in Netflix in America, but also
hmm
Korean, all over.
hmm
And I thought, well, but when I'm with indigenous people in Brazil, the supernatural is guardian, like guardian angels, they're protective. If you're connected to them, you're protected. They help you
hmm
see, it's the
hmm
opposite. They're not. So I wanted to convey that in a
hmm
metaphor. And so, because I believe in good entities,
Oh,
and
it's
I
good
think they're
energy. Yeah.
musical. Yeah, and
hmm
music, like the voices of angels. But the voices of angels in the forest is also full of angels. So that's it. I
Well,
thought,
you think,
yeah,
the indigenous people here in this country, the Native Americans also, when they start to sing and use the different flutes, the first flute is the woodpecker,
mm,
When you think of the birds in the forests and in the jungles and, anywhere in the world, the birds, it's kind of one of our first musical languages in a way, listening to them. And then, some of them sound like monkeys to me, and that's also a sound. So it's kind of this communication, but these songs
yeah,
that the birds, you can't, and the fact that they fly is they're carrying the
yeah,
notes as they travel, they're carrying their story. It's like they're the messengers of the earth.
yeah,
And you think about the canary going in the coal mine, as that too. They're also the warning system of something that's going wrong. If birds are getting sick, something is wrong.
yeah, yeah,
So there's this reality, right? Even though they're mystical and magical beings, because they're flying. We want to fly. Don't you want to fly? I want to fly. Just it would be magical. I want to go back to though what you were saying about it's a positive, the indigenous people being positive in media, right? One of the best things we saw came out of a really bad situation, which the Dakota Access Pipeline. Do you remember that?
yeah,
Where
yeah,
that
yeah.
was terrible. We did some radio shows on it, and Cody Hall came on, and he was in one of the camps. He's up from the Dakotas, I think he was from, and I think it was a Red Warrior camp he was with, and he called in, and it was before, I mean, it wasn't hitting the big media yet at all, and they weren't covering, and we're going, this is terrible, what's happening? Water is life. And he was saying the oil is like a big black snake. This is going to
Mm,
happen. He did get arrested during this whole thing, so we couldn't continue our series with him at that point. But everybody came together from around the world. All the
yeah,
indigenous people came together, which kind of showed a strength. So they ended up in the media, but not as a character, but it was something very beautiful out of something very terrible,
yeah,
just watching everyone unite. And they are united in the same things. So their messaging is similar, whether Native American here, Papua New Guinea to
yeah,
Brazil,
exactly. Yeah,
right? There's a
yeah.
connection. Do you feel that too?
Yes, yes. And they love Chief Seattle, by the way. They read him all the time.
Yeah.
There is a connection between Daniel Munduruku and some other people up Canada. He's connected. He's a leader in Brazil,
hmm
but he's also
hmm
connected to other leaders. They exchange things. Anyway, I also want to share with you, first time I met Karai Papa Mirim, he's a wonderful healer. I was invited by Olívio Jecupé, who is a Guarani writer. And he says,
Mm,
I want to introduce you to a very strong person. There I go to his house, his house is in the middle of the woods. And then I saw this young boy, he was like 17 years old. And I saw him coming and his strength, the way he walked around, it was so peaceful. And he said to talk to me. And he says, do you know why you're here? I say, why?
mm,
Because the forest is calling you. It
Ooh.
doesn't have to do with bloodlines. Some souls are chosen by the forest. They can hear the forest. The forest speaks to them. And the reason why you suffer is because at the time I was sad, it's right after my father's passing again, and he
Yeah.
says, you have to be here with us to connect with your own forest. She wants to tell you things, because in Portuguese, forest is a woman, it's feminine.
Mm.
And so I started initiation with him every week. I would go and he would heal me and tell me myths and talk. It was wonderful. So when Popigua is speaking, the shaman in the story, he's in fact several lines I heard in real life. So a bit of Thomas' journey has to do with my own journey, several years being there. And he says, sometimes somebody's born here in the middle of the forest and can connect. They want to be in malls, they want to have cars. But some other people are born in the city and they have the calling.
Mm.
So you have the calling probably because you're traveling all over and you're happening,
It's
helping
it's
us.
the it's
Yeah,
the nature. It's
yeah,
nature soothes. We recently lost four people, three back to back, like just 1 week. I mean, within days, just very close, and the other four, but the other three right after each other. And there's a pain that goes with it, and all of them connected with nature and the land, and it really reminds us how short our lives are, but how connected and how they're still very extensive. It's not the end of the world. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's
yeah,
yet we're grieving, but it's still when you go to nature and you see the birds fly, you see,
yeah,
things move. It's like everything, nature works in synchronicity. It's like watching a dancer.
yeah,
Even if it's something like an animal eating this, okay, but that has to happen. But there's a synchronicity that is just magical. So I think we do have to have these callings and go. And I think that's another beauty of what you're doing with your story. You also really highlight the difference between economics,
yeah,
strengths, and weaknesses. Okay, so maybe you do not have the money, but how rich are you with what you
yeah,
have in here versus the fancy cars, the fancy suits, the tickets to the fancy concert versus Thomas playing at a fountain and being just as good, right?
yeah,
So that was something I thought you brought in was that something you were also thinking like, hey, to to change that class system that we have
yeah,
in
yeah,
regards to money?
yeah. Because in Brazil, there is a huge difference of class, several
Mm,
millionaires and lots of poor people, and they have no awareness because I've been around, millionaires a lot through my life. And
mm,
because my parents put me in the best schools and things, so although we were not concerned about it, but my father wanted me to have an education, so did my mother. So this is how I met them. And they were so deprived of love, young
mm,
people, because parents were involved with traveling and socialite. You're very lonely.
mm,
And I saw lots of drug addiction, suicide,
yeah,
many things. I lost some friends. And so I know very well, I think, that mindset, you know, exclusive. I want, this is only mine. People don't deserve. I
mm,
deserve. I don't want to share. Why should I? They don't deserve sharing.
yeah.
You know, so this is very Brazilian because there's the middle class, was shrinking in the last
Oh,
government.
it's the same
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
It's on its
So
way. It's on its way. It's still there, but it's hanging on loosely, like
yeah,
Tarzan.
yeah,
It's hanging
yeah.
on. It's trying really hard.
But you
Yeah.
see, in the story, the millionaire, he's the one who's searching for Thomas Sowell. He needs what Thomas has to offer. Although Thomas also, I wanted Thomas to be very rich as well, because he wouldn't deal in the same way with wealth. You know, it doesn't really have to do with wealth, but how you deal with that. You know,
Hmm.
I've been researching now Nigerian tales for my next book, which also
Oh,
have to
oh.
do with music, healing songs, healing prayers, in fact. And I spoke to this amazing, how can I say, he's a writer, he's called Baba Jimmy. And he told me that when people were born with the star of wealth, they have to share because they're meant to help their community.
Mm-hmm.
So being a king in the traditional Nigerian style, not, now contemporary, the traditional style, is being socially responsible, because you have to share your gifts all the time. The more you share, the more gifts you get. It's like a
Yeah.
flow.
If you close your fist, you can't, if you can't receive and you can't really give, but you'll be closed
Exactly.
and you're
Yeah,
on your own. But if you give, you
exactly.
can receive.
Yeah, exactly. Now, among traditional Guarani people in Brazil, the wealth is the land. They care nothing
Mm-hmm.
about. They like communication tools. Like they like
Sure.
internet. Yeah, love studying, things like that. And also, I have a friend who gives classes in the university. He's specialized in Greek mythology. And
Mm.
so one day, Marcus, I invited him to tell some Greek myths in the Guarani, you know. And then when I was hearing, they asked him that, uh, why so many power plays? Most Greek myths have to do with power plays, loving,
Mm.
stealing one's love, being more powerful, just being more powerful
Sounds
than.
like opera to me, Italian opera.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's beautiful in a way, that's human nature, etc. But
Mhm.
how about if you have another paradigm,
Mm.
in which the happy ending is to connect with your inner nature, not to be
Mm.
above. If you think in terms of Olympic helm, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's outside. Gods are outside. They're all over Olympic scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But then for Guarani people and originary people in Brazil as a whole, they're around you, but you can't see them. So you have to develop eyes to see and to connect. You don't have to overcome somebody to become semi-God, to
Mm.
develop. No, just
Mm.
have to be subtle and quiet and listen, humble,
Aware.
be
Awareness.
aware.
I think that's why I was saying at the beginning, you go in nature, you become aware.
Exactly.
Your eyes open up, your ears, your smell, all your senses, but we have more than, five senses and more than
Yeah,
six. I believe we have
exactly.
far more.
Yeah.
It is that connectivity. I mean, it's a beautiful thing that we have. Have you read any myths and stories from the Bushmen in Southern
Yes, yes,
Africa?
yes, yes. I've been
Uh,
researching that a lot. It's
It's
beautiful.
special. It's special. It's really beautiful. And that's how what I was raised with. Some of that and then some in Kenya. But in the Bushmen, I used to read and read and read all these stories and they made sense to me. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like yeah, as a kid growing up, those were the stories that you can hold on to and learn, but also be in awe. I think
Yeah,
that's what it
yeah,
is about the magic. It makes you like, oh yeah, we can have magic. We can have happiness and beauty and appreciation. And that is the richness, right?
yeah,
Not
exactly.
the suit, because I don't care about a suit. I'm either in a park or playing with pets. That's it. You're not getting fancy clothes from me. And so I feel very rich in those things. And I think that's a thing to pass on with the musician. Is this something you see? I know it's a young adult, but I think as an adult, we need to read this, you know?
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, this is something that we discussed at Colors, because when I was writing, I had young adult heroes in the story. It's a love triangle, basically.
Hmm.
And I love Robert Frost, by the way. So it has to do with the poem Two Roads Diverged on a,
Oh, yes.
yeah, so he has to choose between two roads in the woods. And he will, of course, take the less traveled path. This is the basic. I love Robert Frost. But anyway, we thought, is this young adult or adult? there was this discussion because there are 5 different points of view, and some points of view are adults, people with families, a lawyer, and he said, John, the publisher, he decided, and Danielle, he's also my publisher, they decided, no, this is just fiction, no labels. So you won't see YA, in the book usually. It's more like.
But I think that's the beauty. I mean, we're the blend because everything is connected.
Yeah, yeah.
And
yeah.
as soon as you start labeling, I know in marketing people want to do labeling and everything, but as soon as you label something, you've boxed it in.
Yeah.
Instead of letting the connections be, but I understand in marketing we have to do things, but but that's okay. But I think this is beautiful that it's open. Do you see it becoming a movie like your other books?
I don't know.
I think it would be magic,
I would
And
love to.
oh, I wanted to ask about the fountain, because that's a very, we're losing some of that in some areas, but the fountain, it's like here we have a lot of plazas, especially in the Southwest because of the Spanish influence, the Mexican influence, and then also Florida areas. So it just depends on where you're going. Having the old plazas where you have the fountains and gathering places. That to me, is that a very big Brazilian kind of thing? Is that what's happening in your country? Is that that's where it seems to be very European too, right? To have that kind of central crossing guard.
There was a comment. I was reading the people who wrote in the Goodreads, they were writing reviews, and there was this lady, she says, I think it's strange. I couldn't really picture a fountain like that. But there is a special place in Brazil, in São Paulo especially, also all over Brazil, not always with a fountain, but a square where people play music and they sell things, And I was thinking about a square that is close to the university in real life. So that's real, the University of Law is very close to a special, very known with a fountain square. And there was this musician I used to love called Raul Seixas. Raul Seixas was Paulo Coelho's best friend. You must know Paulo Coelho, right? So Paulo Coelho is a very famous Brazilian author who writes magical stories as well.
Magic, we like that.
Yeah, they were very close, And Raulzito, that's his nickname, Little Raul. He chose to stay like a musician, he was a songwriter. And Paulo realized it was a dangerous path. So he started writing books and he stopped giving performances because in the beginning they were performing together. But he had a sign, and then he went to Europe and he survived, Raulzito died very young. But anyway, he became extremely famous in Brazil. And there were so many people following him all over. So he liked to go to Praça da República, that's where I imagine the first meeting, and play for free when he was on top, pretending he was his own, somebody's covering him,
Oh, that's nice. Well,
Yeah,
keeping to the roots, keeping
exactly,
keeping your feet in your feet. Sometimes you got to walk barefoot,
Exactly, yeah.
That's
And
exactly it.
yeah, and also basically Esther Stone, when he came to Brazil, he likes to give a free concert and he likes to play in closed spaces. He's playing all over theaters, all over. He was touring now. But when he came here, he says, I want to give an open concert, like I always do. So his concert was in a park, a wonderful park.
Beautiful.
Which is also a reservation called Parque Ibirapuera, was beautiful. And I was his interpreter. And I'm used to speaking to readers, which is another crowd, more mental in a way. But when I saw him playing and people were dancing, kids were playing, there were old people as well, all sorts of people from all
I
walks
love
of
that.
life. And I was interpreting. So after the concert was over, I kept on talking, because he's with people and helping them say their messages. And this is also my source of inspiration for the first chapters, people from
Oh,
all types of life in a free concert. And Thomas does just like
mhm,
Estes does, and Raulzito used to do, they have this urge to play for free, very,
mm,
very open. And he
that's
still
nice.
does that. He still plays for free whenever he can. And if you look up in the internet, you will see there are several pictures of Stas playing in front of a fountain. Uh,
Ah, what
yeah,
is it about Brazil and Argentina? A lot of musicians I know, they just keep going back, especially in blues music. And a friend of ours, yeah, I don't know if you've John Lee Hooker, the
yeah,
blues musician, his daughter, Zakia, she's been on our show for years, her and her husband, Olin Christopher Bell. They go down to Argentina all the time. And so they get kind of Latin blues music and they just feel, I don't know, they just say there's an energy and it is this magic you're talking
yeah, yeah, yeah.
about going south and that music is very part of culture, and it's I think during COVID we all kind of were like, oh, it's nice to see things on a computer screen, but there's nothing like going out and seeing live music. And to me, especially outdoors in a park and nature, there's just that is coexistence to me. When you have, that's magic to me. Music outside is beautiful. But speak about the musicians in your book trailer. Tell us a little bit about those musicians. Do you know them? Are they friends or?
Yeah, yeah. Those the leader is Carai Papamirim, that's exactly the same one who told me the forest had called me. He's a very, very close friend, and he's also a spiritual counselor, you know. But they are very well-humored, make cracking jokes all the time, don't take themselves seriously. And so I told him I needed to do that. And I thought he was the only one who was going to play because last year for my birthday, he said, come here, I'll give you a Guarani birthday party.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, my daughter and some friends, we went up there and he sang a healing song. It was amazing, And so I asked him, why don't you sing again? And we're going to put that for the book trailer. So people will at least have, people who will read the book will share some of my experience with you. And then when I arrived, he had invited all his friends, which is typical
Party, a
of
big party.
Guarani. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's typical. You go there, the kids and people from all over, and they were going to play. I said, "Well, I thought you were going to play yourself. And he says, no, no, I can't. I need to be with everyone. So his wife is there, uh, and also his sister-in-law and some other friends. He made his child. He has a boy who's playing the drums. And so it
It's
was
cool.
beautiful. And so Danielle Kohler, the girl who is the publisher, she lives in Chile,
Oh,
although,
okay.
yeah, she's American, but she's married to somebody she lives there. So she knows also a lot about preservation.
Mm,
She writes about animals and preservation of animals.
awesome.
And so she speaks fluent Spanish, so she could connect very much with that scene. And I think she did a beautiful job. When she
Mm.
sent me the book trailer, I thought, wow, I wish one day the musician becomes a movie. That's what I
I
felt.
I think so too. I
Yeah,
think so too. I love
yeah,
in the book that you also have it where it's Thomas's journal, so it's his thoughts, and that's part of where the magic and it's poetic to me, and it's very open. It's authentic, and real, which is just I can't wait for everybody to get this. Before you go, I wanted to ask because everything else you've done right in Brazil, why did you decide, okay, we're going to go with English, because this is your first English book, right, that you've
yeah,
done in
yeah,
English?
yeah.
So yeah, was that I know that you've taught kindergarten and you're an educator as well, but how was it going in writing in English and putting this together, and
Well,
why?
just before I answer the question, I want to thank a friend of mine, a young poet called Victor. He has translated the book into Portuguese. And
Oh,
one of the poems, when Thomas is getting crazy, and his mind is breaking, there was this desperate poem, and it's by Victor's. There's a thank you note in the end, and so I was very thrilled and happy to include, that
Oh, it's
text.
beautiful.
Yeah, because his mind is not always so lyrical. There's a specific point, again, giving a little spoiler, in which he starts breaking his thoughts. Well, I want to share something with you. My first story was written in English. I was living in the States.
Uh-huh.
I was a teenage in high school, Constantine, Michigan, and I was exchange student. And back in
Uh-huh.
Brazil, my school was very strict, a French school. And so I couldn't write, and I could write about books, but there was no space whatsoever for a workshop or creative writing. So when I was there, I was 16, and I joined a creative writing session. I was so happy. And I
Mm.
realized I could write very easily. I was speaking English, and I could put the stories in English very easily because I've heard stories all through my life from being out, from the
Mhm.
forest and listening. It was very easy to create narratives. So my first story was about a magical bird, and people really loved it.
I
And
like this.
so,
See, the magic is, yeah, you're
yeah,
just the magical being. That's it.
it was there back there. But then when I came back to Brazil, being a writer was something I couldn't consider, because I thought it was so far off. You know,
Mm.
I didn't deserve to be a writer, I thought. But then I was a teacher in the kindergarten. I was researching fairy tales, and I wanted to see how kids react to fairy tales. And I started making up fairy tales with the kids.
See?
And one of the mothers saw the crazy stories we were making up, and she invited me to publish in a very large, famous, in fact, is Latin America's biggest um, newspaper. So I published the first story, and it became a hit. Kids wanted more and more
See?
and more,
That's
and an
awesome.
instant hit. And then I got an invitation from a publisher to start writing and publishing, organizing my research as a book.
Mhm.
And that was like 30 years ago, and it's been 92 books. I never stopped writing. People
Is
keep
it
on
over
asking me,
92 books?
92 books.
Wow. How do you balance your time? I mean, do you have all these
Oh,
characters? Are you like Thomas, where you've got all these characters talking to you? Like, what
yeah,
happens
yeah,
when you go
yeah.
to bed at night? Do you have to tell them, okay, it's time to go to bed? Go play with your toys in the room over there?
Well, no, yeah, people complain I'm absent-minded, very much. My kids were little. I was traveling to the forest where my father's house was,
Yeah.
and I got distracted. I started seeing Merlin and the knights from the round table, and
Oh, cool.
I went up to Rio de Janeiro, just the opposite direction, and then they go, "Mom, are we going to go to the beach?" I said, "The beach, 10 hours." Driving. And I couldn't realize, and I had to drive back. They thought it was funny, they know their mother, you know. But it's true. When I'm writing, it's very hard to. I get hyper focused. I'm always thinking about. I wake up, I take notes all the time. I listen to the characters. They become
Mm.
alive to me like entities,
Mm.
and it's hard to concentrate.
Mm.
But when they go away, when I finish my story, there's just huge
Like, wow.
vacuum, you know,
Yeah. It's like
and
my
I
friends left town. Yeah.
exactly, and I miss
Oh,
them very much until
oh.
the next characters come, and
Someone starts knocking on your door. That's it. It's like,
exactly,
here,
yeah,
I want in. You got to write about me. Do you listen to music when you write?
all the time. I listen to
Ah,
music all the time. I love music. And
yeah.
this is how I met Esther Stone. I was listening. I want to have a troubadour sequence. And I was researching the poems, and I put, Google for troubadours, contemporary troubadours, and I found him there. And when I went to his site, I realized he was writing about music being the key to open one's inner library,
Mm,
one's inner soundtrack. And this is why he doesn't use lyrics mostly
mm.
when he plays. And I thought that was wonderful. So I wrote to the site asking permission. I wanted to quote, to use some quotes in the book. And then he immediately called me.
Oh,
And
see, that's awesome.
yeah, and he's very magical as well. He goes, uh, You see, I saw your name and I visualized lots of stories.
You sing your characters.
Yeah. And then we
That's,
became very close. It was a magical meeting.
well, there's something about music where it goes with your chakras. The
Mhm.
different chakras, there's different sounds that go with different parts. So it's healing, but it's also clearing so that you can create. The creative process is always about, I don't know, turning the oyster into the pearl.
Yeah.
You know, you're always scratching at something. It's like, and sometimes it's like frustrating. And then all of a sudden, oh, the release, there it is. That's what we're supposed to do. Do you have that when you're writing? Like, I know it's
Yeah.
there. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden it's there. It's like,
Yeah.
ooh, it
Exactly.
is there. You have to stick it out. So it's like, it's blood, sweat, and tears and big smiles, but there is blood, sweat, and tears and involved.
Yeah. Yeah. And my daughter, she's a teacher of yoga instructor.
Oh, okay,
So
cool.
yeah, so we listen to music when she's my own instructor.
Uh-huh.
I have a personal one. It's very nice.
Cool.
Yeah, and we listen to mantras and things, when and it's changing, the mindset. It's amazing as well. But and she always noticed that when I get engrossed into writing, when I get really hyper focused, I can't stop. It's like being taken over.
Yeah, you found, see, that's what I think about the third eye. I know people are going to think I'm
Yeah,
weird, but like, that's when you open it, then it's like, all right,
exactly,
direct connection, like it's the downloading process. It
exactly,
is just getting
exactly,
to the
exactly,
download is that
exactly.
creative itch, and you're going, and then all of a sudden, oh, and then
Yeah,
it's just
yeah,
boom, everything just flies, and then
yeah,
everybody just leave you alone, leave me alone.
yeah.
Just back off, I'm busy.
And there is,
Well, it's interesting because the spiritual people I know in my life that are mediums or psychics, whatever you want to call them, but connected, they go through the same thing, not necessarily writing, but once there's a download, it's a download. It's like your computer. Here's new information. You need to know it. You need these connectivities, and they go through the same kind of thing. So it's that's fascinating. It's all connected. See, it's the magic. It's the
yeah.
magic.
There was this Art of Memory book by
Ah,
Yates, Francis Yates, and she studies in the beginning, back in Greece. People were considered libraries. The storytellers were the ones who knew all the stories by heart, and so the famous classical authors, they would go and talk to the storytellers in order to do their plots, to build their plots. I mean, anyway, there's this anecdote in which a storyteller comes into a party,
mm,
and he looks at everybody because he has to decide which story to tell. And this was a kind of intuition. He had to know which story would fit. So he takes a very close look, and then somebody calls him out of the house, and he goes out, just to ask. They say he was going to talk about his fees. Anyway, the house burned, fell down. Everybody was killed. But
wow,
he could remember every single face
wow,
because he had
that's amazing.
connected. You know,
Mm.
it's
You know,
called the art of memory.
yeah, the art of memory is I I don't know if it's because of the visual and the audio for me, but I do a lot of that with how we travel, and it's very people like, how do you? I'm like, I don't know. But there's musicians, some of them will decide this is my set list. I'm going in, and I'm a musician, and when I go in, it's like you may think you have this, but you feel the energy of the room to know, oh no, we need to play this rock or we need to play it that way, you know. And I know like Jack White, the musician Jack White, he doesn't
Mhm.
do a set list until he gets on stage, and then he lets the audience dictate how it's going to be. He can feel this is what is needed and this is what's going to happen. It's spontaneous. And as a band, I think that's the other interesting thing about music. Like musicians in a band, you have this connect. It's like, you and your daughter, right? You could just look at her and she knows what you're thinking,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Same thing in music. Musicians have this, unspoken, you don't have to talk. Okay, this is where you're going in the song. This is this, I don't know how to explain it, but there is that other conversation that is not a conversation, as we call it. If that makes no
Oh,
sense,
so
but I know what I mean.
what instruments do you play? I'm curious now.
Oh, sing and write, and I write, and then
Oh, that's
guitar
nice.
and
Uh-huh.
keys. Yeah, but mostly singing, because I can't do one and the other at the same time very well. It's either singing or, yeah, if the guitar part's not good. It's
Jack
not
White
good.
came to Brazil a couple of times. People just love him,
Ah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
he's got an energy. He's crazy.
yeah.
He's
I like
crazy.
him a lot,
Mhm.
And also when Queen came with Fred Mercury,
Oh,
yeah, in Rio de Janeiro, people
did you go
just
see it?
sung. No, it's in Rio. I was
Uh,
in São Paulo. But I was
oh
watching
yeah.
alive, and he didn't sing at all. He just conducted. People were singing. He was very moved. All his songs, because Brazilians are crazy about musicians.
Yeah.
They really love them.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, you've got to think you've got your own sambas,
yeah, wonderful. Yeah,
hmm
wonderful music as well. And what I tried, there's something I haven't answered. You told me, how did I imprint magic in the story? So I tried to use musical words,
Ah,
alliteration, the
yes,
sound.
like a songwriter.
Yeah. And also there is this leitmotif, the
Mm.
same question pops up into different characters.
Ah,
There's this repetition technique, if you
you're sneaky.
yeah, yeah. Just
A
like
good
in a
sneaky, a
song.
positive.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
like
that's
in a song.
no wonder I connected with it immediately. I was like, oh, this is a piece of art. It should be like a coffee table book. With,
Thank
I
you.
just feel like it's that kind of beauty. It's a beautiful, it's just, it's a piece of art. I don't think I've
Thank
ever
you.
said that about a book in that way, but it's just, yeah, as soon as I started, I was like, ooh, this is art. I know it's all art, it's literary art, but you know what I mean? It's like, that's a piece of art. It's magic. It's cool. Well, I'm so glad to meet you, and thank
Yeah.
you for joining us here on Big
Thank
Blend
you
Radio,
so
everyone.
much.
This has been amazing to chat with you. Please keep us posted on other projects. Come back anytime. I want everyone to go get your book, everyone. It's The Musician, and you can get it by Author-Heloisa-Prieto. Did I say that right again?
Yeah.
I love this. And the website is themusician.info. You can also follow her on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Já?